Welcome to the Fortify Your Data podcast. I'm here with my friend Jackie Sanders of Blockland fame.
Very famous.
You had Bernie. Now you have the real brains behind the operation, the real muscle, and the real crypto person, right?
Yes, you know me so well. Well, thank you.
So do you want to
start on crypto?
Yeah, we'll just start and end on crypto and forget about blockchain.
I am a friend of crypto.
Right. Well, you have to be, right?
Yes.
That's what the conference Blockland is, crypto and blockchain. But tell us how you kind of got to be the captain of the Blockland ship.
The unsuspecting victim of time and chance. No, actually started with I am a boomerang. I'm from Cleveland and I moved to New York City for
Anywhere. Yeah,
okay.
You can talk to clarify. There are 3 cameras. You can speak to any of the cameras.
Okay,
this is all
give me
good.
Logistics.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you're gonna cut that part out?
No, we're just gonna keep going.
Oh, really?
Now we'll cut it out.
Okay. All right. So anyway, so I lived in New York City for a fairly long time, and but my true love is Cleveland. I wanted to come back here and make a mark, and so I came back, and so I really immersed myself in the entrepreneurial culture here. And anyway, one thing leads to another. I had a conversation with David Gilbert about what it's like to come back to Cleveland after being in a bigger market, and then he's like, hey, I have this great opportunity for you. Mm-hmm. And 3 weeks later, I was a member of the Blockland community. Sure. And sitting around a table with a bunch of other people and how to get this conference started for this year.
And you had no really blockchain experience prior to that?
0.
And how about your cryptocurrency
experience?
Portfolios?
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
But before that, nothing, right? You,
no.
You really are new to this whole...
I'm new to, yes, which actually I think is, in a way, an asset because I see myself as Switzerland, in a way, and mm-hmm. I can ask all the dumb questions about blockchain and cryptocurrency because, one, I'm really interested and I want to learn, and I think that while we represent a broad demographic in terms of knowledge of blockchain and involvement in blockchain, a lot of people are still fairly new to it, so I'm able to bring that naive mentality into it and make sure that what the conference that we're delivering is truly inclusive, which is mm-hmm. a really important component of what the initiative is all about.
And so dive into that initiative. It's a conference. Now, aside from the conference, there's also there's a City Block, which is...
Mm-hmm. So City Block is about making, really transforming one of the most iconic buildings in the Midwest into a tech hub, mm-hmm. and really taking Blockland and giving it permanence and more tangibility. Mm-hmm. So, Blockland itself is still a very young initiative, a little over a year and a half old, and has made a lot of headlines in that short period of time. And the conference was really a proof point that showed that this concept that Bernie initiated has a lot of roots and has a lot of opportunity and is delivering real results. And so City Block will be kind of the extension of that.
And going back to that conference, the conference has really been the pinnacle of what Blockland is, especially the first one. What were the takeaways from the first conference that you've kind of absorbed and are implementing different things for the second conference?
Well, one is that people are really curious and interested. A lot of people who attended just heard about blockchain, but they had no idea really what it is, and others are fairly knowledgeable. And I think the biggest takeaways, they realized that, one, while blockchain is new, there's a lot of relevance and a lot of different application, and that's being explored, and there's more to do, and it's something that it's important for businesses and government to be aware of and to keep an eye on the pulse of it, because it will has the potential to dramatically change the way we work in the very near future. Mm-hmm. And if you look at blockchain relative to other emerging tech, AI in particular, AI has been on a 30-year trajectory, and now it's really starting to come into its own. Blockchain is 10 years old, so it's still kind of maybe it's starting to emerge out of its youth, but there's a lot more to happen, and Blockland is the opportunity to have that conversation in a way that is approachable, but also It has a lot of rigor in terms of the caliber of speakers we're bringing, the types of conversations, and the areas in which we are focusing. So we focus on very specific tracks and applications of blockchain and do it in very real terms related to healthcare, manufacturing, government, finance, the just general commercial sector, as well as nonprofit and education.
And so, I mean, first and foremost, I feel like the first conference was a educational exercise where you're just trying to get the community engaged, trying to get other business leaders say, hey, this is what this technology can do. Do you anticipate having a similar amount of resources allocated to educating people on blockchain on a low level, or do you think you're going to get more into some of the deeper case studies and how blockchain is implemented today?
It'll be a mixture. Still fairly grounded in more of the earlier case studies. Mm-hmm. So I was speaking with this organization today called MITRE that we're talking to, and they've been doing a lot of pilots. A lot of the applications aren't fully realized yet because that's the stage in which we're at with blockchain and understanding the different approaches in which it can be used. However, with cryptocurrency, there's been huge changes over the past year. It's really dynamic, so we have a number of speakers who are going to speak more to how that is being realized in very tangible terms. So we have Hester Peirce from the SEC who's going to be speaking on main stage. We have Mike Hussey and Thad Batt from Utah and Colorado who run state commissions and are showing how the government is looking at blockchain and moving it into pilot stage for different areas. We have Lieutenant Governor speaking about Innovate Ohio and how technology is moving in that direction. And then we have in the private sector, Colonel Jim Regener, who's talking about how blockchain is going to completely disrupt the aviation industry and how you maintain airplanes and through supply chain. We are talking about the food industry with Golden State Foods, their Chief Strategy Officer, Bob Wolpert, and the head of regulatory and food innovation or food technology at Kroger, Howard Papula, speaking about how blockchain is really dramatically changing the face of the food industry. And we know Walmart has been doing a lot in blockchain and really, with its iron fist, enforcing change in that area.
Yeah, well, they certainly have a lot of patents for it.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw how many patents Walmart filed for like blockchain and AI recently.
The more patents you are, the more
powerful you are, right?
So Walmart's about power.
Yeah.
Yes. We like power.
So Blockland, we like power. That's the tagline of 2019.
Absolutely not. Which is actually diametrically opposed to
right.
what blockchain is about,
right.
which is distributing and democratization
exactly.
and increasing accessibility and transparency and reducing redundancy.
So and I don't. Maybe you slipped his name and I didn't hear it, but Nick Szabo's also speaking, which is in the...
Yes, I actually just spoke with him or emailed with him the other day. He's super excited. So he's a returnee.
Yeah.
But he's coming in a little bit of a different capacity. Last year he spoke to the general audience, and this year we're going to really do we're focusing within our tech community with the developers workshop, and he's going to do a very highly technical, which is really his thing, discussion and education around smart contracts, but really from a much more sophisticated standpoint. So we have changed our approach with our developers workshop this year to make it more academically rigorous, and we're working in partnership with Cleveland State and Tri-C, who've been really phenomenal partners in developing our curriculum, and also tying that to commercial partners to ensure that what we're teaching is not academic, but it translates directly into application. So we have on our third day of the developers workshop, where ChromeAway is running a gaming workshop about their gaming.
Is this a new edition?
Who is the new edition?
This gaming workshop, is this a new edition?
Yes, well, it's part of the developers workshop in its totality, but Sunday and Monday are a little bit more academic in the fundamentals of Hyperledger and Ethereum, and Tuesday is then applications. So ChromeAway is going to be doing a 2-hour workshop on gaming. Onum is doing a 2-hour workshop in the smart contract space, and then we're also working with Highland, and they're going to be doing something as well. Interesting.
So when you say like gaming, what do you mean, just for clarification?
Well, they actually literally have a game on blockchain.
So it's like a simulation almost.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's quite literal
Yeah.
gaming. And as we were talking about before this, is gaming is really an important component of blockchain in a way because of the application, the use of gaming and tokenization in cryptocurrency. So whether or not you're going to become a gamer, that's a fairly probably small, well, it's actually a huge industry, but maybe small. And
it's a vague term too.
Yeah, it's going to have certainly, it's going to pervade into other areas and applications even if you're not directly developing video games.
Right, and so for the developer days, those are kind of for the super technical. And as I was kind of alluding with the Nick Szabo smirk, the man is too smart for his own good, certainly too smart for the general public's own good. So, I think that putting him in front of technical people that could really absorb a lot of the content that he's putting out is a much better use for that. And I think that's an example of some of the small changes that I've heard of that Blockland's kind of adjusting to make a more inclusive conference.
Yeah, and also so that was a learning. You want to make sure the right speakers fit the right audience, and we're providing the right level of conversation. And but also we're doing some workshops outside of the formal coding workshop. So I'm really excited about a smart contracts session that we're having. Smart contracts are obviously very important within blockchain, and but sometimes when you just listen to a didactic presentation, it doesn't truly sink in. So we have a panel of attorneys who are going to talk about the legalities of smart contracts and what makes a smart contract a legal binding agreement versus just a bunch of code, as well as a technologist who's going to go into the technology components. And then in the second part of that workshop is to actually non-coders will be building a smart contract. So you really see and get your hands around what it is, what it isn't, and hope, and we believe we'll leave with a really thorough understanding and get through that barrier that often exists when people are teaching non-technologists about smart contracts.
And off the top of your head, what do you think the split's going to be between technical people and maybe more business-oriented people?
I would say it similar to last year. It'll probably be in the 80-20 split business.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. That's who goes to conferences. So,
yeah, and that's also who we appeal to. That's our target because you can't just non-technology people or technologists need to understand technology. You don't have to be able to code, but you have to understand the application or the potential applications to ask the right questions to actually be able to test and implement new technologies. And the reality is if you ignore that because it's scary and it's unknown, you will be left in the dust, and that is something we certainly do not want to happen.
Yeah, and I think that especially being in technology, not everyone needs to know how to code, but everyone should at least understand some of those fundamentals if they're going to especially get into like a smart contract session, right?
Sure.
Of like how to build one.
Right.
So as a conference, what have been the biggest challenges this year?
No challenges whatsoever.
Right.
What are you talking about?
So
well, I think that the biggest, I don't know if it's the biggest, but a challenge is that last year there's a lot of buzz because of the unknown. Blockchain is a buzzword, and Blockland is a buzzword, and people are kind of curious and you don't need a lot of proof points when it's just kind of this glossy concept. And the reality is implementation is always challenging. And implementation of change is challenging. And so this year, we are really fortunate and well-deserved that there was a lot of work went into the initiative last year, and it resulted in a lot of positive things. So we're working off of that, which is
upward momentum.
Upward momentum, but at the same time, people expect more. So when you've done something really great and you know how to make it even greater, there's certainly a challenge there, and sometimes there can be fatigue as well. People work really hard, they want a little break. So making sure people understand that we are constantly evolving. We're evolving also in terms of what kind of entity we are as the technology evolves. And so one of the things also is as I've talked to many people within the community, in the technology community as well as just generally, is that there's a lot of very clear schools of thought, and people oftentimes think of things in terms of black and white. This is right, this is wrong, this is what blockchain stands for, this is what it's not, this is bastardizing it. And the reality is we don't know. Anyone who says they know absolutely where this technology is going to go is wrong, because it takes time and work and experimentation to really realize its full potential. And that is the perspective of Blockland, is to have that and have those even contrarian opinions in one place, so that we can figure it out and then ultimately come to what that true answer is, which honestly won't be revealed until 2025, 2050, who knows?
Sure. Well, it's all very speculative, and especially, you know, we've talked many times about how polarized some of the blockchain people can be to the crypto people.
But we all love each other.
Well, they in theory are the same people, right? You can't really, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
But and this podcast certainly appeals more to the crypto crowd, so it's good to have more dissenting opinions to talk to each other. But if you're speaking to like somebody that's heavy into crypto and is doing speculation every day, what is your pitch to getting them into the conference?
I think it's important to get out of your own space, to look around, and not necessarily just to be able to assess. And because I think that when everyone gets narrow into their own space and that is their purview, but there's so much happening outside of that could potentially impact what you're doing, and it is a potential blind spot, which can be dangerous and can be counterproductive to what you're doing. And so is this the conference to find the bleeding edge of what's going on in blockchain? Not really. No, there's other conferences for that, and that's what they're good at. If you want to see how blockchain is impacting a wealth of industries and applications beyond cryptocurrency, and I think that's really important to keep your eyes open and to speak up and talk to people who have different perspectives, so that you have a fuller picture of what's going on.
No, I think it's super important too, and especially on the speculative side, it's important to know what some of these blockchain applications are doing, because that can actually affect the market, especially the altcoin
Certainly.
Market,
Yeah.
more so than Bitcoin's kind of its own animal at this point, but the rest of the little guys,
cluster together.
Yeah, I like how I do like how it's always Bitcoin and altcoins. It's like it's altcoin season. And I'm like, Litecoin went up $2, man. That's not like a season. That's a fluctuation. Bitcoin's going up $2,000 every day, down $2,000. So, as far as like any of the successes that Blockland has had, how would you measure success for Blockland 2019?
I would say success is having a meeting where everyone has a great experience and feels that they're getting something out of it. One of the core focuses for this year is to have what I call strategic collisions. And it's about networking and meeting people, learning something and taking that back in actionable ways. So when we talk with our speakers, it's not just how you can pontificate about this, that, and the other thing, but how can you packet that into a tool or a very concise takeaway that someone can then use to look at their own situation, their business, and so forth, to see where is it relevant, where is it not relevant, and how will I move ahead in my business thereafter.
And so, as far as that's concerned, I think that particular statement also appeals to startups that are in this stage of complete uncertainty and they don't really know where they're going. You have a startup track for them, right? You have a
Yes. Startup is exceedingly important to Blockland.
Any blockchain company is in theory a startup at this point still, right?
Yes, although some are quite big, but they're all really startups, and that's where innovation generally takes place. A lot of, we have, and then in this region especially, we have a lot of legacy companies, and there's often a rift between the two, because legacy companies, they're seen as kind of the old guard and not changing or transforming quickly enough, but also they're these behemoths that, not even always behemoths, but their history can sometimes be challenging to overcome. They have processes and investments that are working right now, and they don't necessarily always have the opportunity to shift on a dime. Whereas startups are so nimble and can make these paradigm shifts very quickly to ensure success and really integrate those learnings. So the merging and the relationship between those two are really important to enable scalability and success. And so we are planning to host a number of startups in different ways One in terms of our pitch competition, and we made some changes this year because last year we felt that maybe the startups were too isolated in the conference, and so they're being much more integrated this year. The pitch competition finals is actually taking place at lunch on Tuesday, so the up to top 5 finalists will be presenting in front of the full conference.
All right, captive audience. You want to eat,
exposure.
you're watching startups.
You get your turkey sandwich, and you get an amazing pitch presentation. And we're going to do it in a really fun way. Also, startups are being offered exhibit stalls, which are centrally located in the conference. So people will be passing by your booth and your demo stations very easily. You don't have to go to, excuse me, to some far off corner to see what's on the bleeding edge. And the startups are the bleeding edge, so that's we're excited to be working with them.
Absolutely. And if you were a startup that has something to do with crypto or blockchain, would they still be able to sign up for any of that?
Yes. Right now, actually, if they want to contact me directly, we do have a page that is in the process of being put up on our website, which is blocklandsolutions.com. However, if you email me at jsanders@blocklandcleveland.com, I will make sure you get all the information. And
you can her email will be on all notes, and I'll just keep proliferating that throughout the internet so that you can contact her.
Oh, goody. Yes.
But so this is also, I guess what I was getting at is this is an opportunity for a lot of these startups that can get in front of a wealth of people, just different from healthcare, manufacturing, food, if it's agriculture. I don't know if that's its own thing or if that's really,
it's like integrated into commercial.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about, but
no.
you have a bunch of different groups of people really feeding into that, and I think that's something that's special. One thought I had is Blockland still functioning with the nodes?
There's been a change,
Yeah.
and so we're essentially no.
Okay. No to nodes.
No to nodes. Not that nodes are good,
yeah.
but so kind of to what I was speaking about earlier, like things evolve.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot happening in the region from an economic development standpoint. We want to make sure that we are compatible with other initiatives like the Innovate Ohio work, and there's some other programs that are going on. So Blockland's purview has tightened up as we've been out, focusing on the conference and city block as well as general community engagement within this realm. So which doesn't really, so it's not as node structured.
Sure. And just to clarify, last year, what blockchain was to me, the most impressive piece of it was done in like 6 months. So from start to finish, they just ran with it. And to do that, it was a big community effort. And so they had nodes for education, for business application, for next generation or next gen like technologies. I believe there's 8 total. So, and I have a bad memory, but let's just say I said 8 things. And then you had a bunch of community leaders kind of grouping together to tackle those issues. And now it's more organic or internal within Blockland, that entity.
Yeah, well, still community involvement is really important.
Yeah.
And so we have 6 different committees related to the conference, and we whoever is interested in participating, we welcome your participation. I just try to be mindful of people's time, so we've been more specific about how we've utilized people's time. So the speaker team, we have a broad speaker team, and then we have a more kind of concentrated speaker vetting team, which you are.
And these are people that recruit speakers, so.
Yeah, and reviewing proposals to make sure that they align with our core principles and our agenda and so forth. So that's just one example.
Yeah, and there's like one for sponsorship, one for.
Yes, there's a committee for sponsorship. There's a committee for education. There's a committee for Cleveland attractions, which is about driving outside organizations into this region. And we're working very closely with Team Neo on that. So they're part of our committee.
Sure.
And probably forgetting a few committees, but
it's okay. It gets harder. there's a lot of things to remember.
Yes.
But and you mentioned Team Neo, who we've had several of their teammates in this podcast in one form or another. Actually, it was just with Neil yesterday. But as far as Blockland is a community effort to bring more businesses to Cleveland, to bring more business in general to Cleveland. do you feel that there's a lot of support that you're getting from, there's a lot of entities native to Cleveland, like the Greater Cleveland Partnership, Team Neo, the Cleveland Foundation, even Jumpstart from the startup thing? Everyone's on board, right?
Yes, everyone's on board, and everyone has a different focus, but that's how things get done. Cleveland has a wealth of organizations that are focused on economic development, and it's really critical that there's strong collaboration and alignment with one another, so there isn't duplication of efforts, and because resources are finite. But all those organizations you mentioned are financial sponsors of Blockland, and so they've been, and then some have been putting a lot of kind of sweat equity into it as well, like Team Neo especially has been working with me, and it's also fun. I mean, it's just the other day I was talking with them about a Taiwanese company that is a kind of a prospect where Cleveland might be a great place for them to make their U.S. headquarters. And so we're seeing who do we connect them to within the region to make a compelling
case to move here.
Yeah, and so it's about collaboration.
Yeah, and I think that all those entities add even more legitimacy to the whole movement. Not that you needed it, but it does help, and especially when you're trying to attract, bigger companies to be involved, whether they're donating their CEO for a speaking position or they're donating money to fund things. This is a legitimate machine now that has a lot of legitimate players in the region working to make this a success. And so, do you think that this is enough for Blockland between this and City Block, or what do you think should be the next logical step?
I think for right now, these are two really important initiatives that need to be done well, and focus is a good thing. I don't think we're overly focused, but I think if you spread too thin, then you dilute your impact. And at this stage, which is really still very young, it's the right focus for success.
And we're nearing that half-hour mark, which is where I try to start wrapping things up. But let's go into a deep dive of the conference. So when's the date?
Conference is official dates are December 9th through the 11th. However, the developers workshop starts on the 8th, and that at 1 p.m.
And who should attend?
Everyone should attend.
Well, like specifically,
so technology experts, developers, especially related to the developers workshop. If you are not necessarily as well versed in blockchain, that is a great area, and you get to literally meet Nick, which is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, you can even shake his hand.
You can shake his hand. It'll be in a fairly small group. And in terms of the general audience, government leaders, business leaders, CTOs, CIOs, we really focus on people who are change agents. However, that doesn't mean you have to have a fancy title to be a change agent, because that comes in all different areas. And so it's really important, if you're interested in seeing how technology ecosystem is developing and how it can apply to your industry, whether it's healthcare, finance, manufacturing, and so forth, I think this would be a really good use of your time and resources. And finally, students are very important. They're our future, and so we are recruiting students to ensure that they have this visibility and see what's on the forefront and how businesses are getting that exposure. So
yeah, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
It's okay.
But the next thing I was going to say is sponsorships. I assume that you're still accepting people to give you money. Who should sponsor?
We will not turn down money at all.
Yeah.
It's a shock.
Who would be a good sponsor for you?
Who would be a good sponsor? There's two kind of sets of sponsors. I would say we have community sponsors, so organizations who don't necessarily have a lot of work yet within blockchain, but by sponsoring Blockland, you are sponsoring economic development within the region, which is critically important, and having that exposure and having attendees who are here, although we focus on both Northeast Ohio and the broader region to attend the conference. It's just great exposure, and there's a lot of accessibility. And the second are blockchain providers. This is a great opportunity to get yourself in front of potential customers. And so we have a wide range of sponsorship opportunities, from those which are fairly accessible to
Very
higher,
inaccessible.
no, well, more premier.
Yeah.
And so we are also happy to discuss what is appropriate to your organization.
Sure, and not really sponsorships, but with the tickets, they are as cheap as they're going to be right now, or as inexpensive as they're going to be right now. So if you're thinking about going to the conference and you need somebody to kind of push you over that fence, certainly reach out to Jackie's email address, which you will have, or you can reach out to me. You know, we can talk about it. Certainly don't wait until the last minute, because as with any conference, it only gets more expensive as it goes on.
Right, and a lot of organizations are also offering discount codes, so if you're
there's a bunch floating on the Blockland Cleveland group right now too.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and that offers a 20% discount off of the rate. And there's also, we've really tried, the ticket price of the conference is actually less than the cost for us to put it on, because we want to make sure that it is an accessible conference. So, and there's also some scholarships that are available, not just for students, but for those who don't have the means to put into attending. We really want to make sure we're making that possible. There is a limited number, but if you send an email to the scholarships at Blockland Solutions or blocklandcleveland.com, we will be able to evaluate that too.
Yeah, and again, all those links will be in any of the descriptions on either Libsyn or YouTube if you're watching the video. Do you have any parting thoughts?
Just that it's been really an honor to have the opportunity to work on this and learn about blockchain.
Yeah. And
I feel like my doors had been open wide. And last year, impact at the individual level was, well, impact in general from conference was all over the board. From John Donovan speaking, he decided AT&T decided Cleveland is a city to watch, and that's why it became one of the 5G cities. As well as an important component of their Dreamers program. And then you have startups like United Coin who met up with the Cavs, and it put them on the map. I think within 6 months they had a contract with the Cavs, and they had a laundry list of other sports organizations knocking on their door. So there's that type of transformation. And then there's at the individual level, there are people who met people who led to new jobs. And when you're sitting just behind your computer, sometimes you need to get out and actually shake someone's hand, and it can lead to things you never knew were possible.
Absolutely.
And that's my final.
No, that was the best. That was the best final parting thoughts we've had in a really long time.
Oh, thank you.
I thought she was just going to make fun of me for being bald now.
No, I like it. You look tough and
yeah, that's all
slick.
All right, well, we're done. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us.